Hey, Drinks with Defenders fam. We have a really special episode and a really special guest for you. In light of the conversation and some of the things we wanted to talk about and that we do talk about, we just wanted to flag for you that the episode will talk about things like self harm and drug use. We care about you, and we just wanted to give you a heads up so that you can be safe and continue to take care of yourself. Welcome to Drinks with Defenders. I'm Addie B. Plate.
And I'm Kayla Murphy. We're two law school friends turned criminal defense attorneys turned podcast hosts.
We're here in this space because we now work in separate offices and miss collaborating with each other.
We've been talking about creating a podcast for years where we talk about the complexities of the criminal justice system, the aspects of it that we grapple with, and the importance of what we do.
At the end of a long work week, we want to sit down, have a drink with each other, and talk about the rabbit holes of criminal defense, just like we always have. So let's get into it. Cheers! We're trying to get caught up on House of the Dragon, which I'm obsessed with, but I'm like a few episodes behind the end of the season. And then the Olympics like completely took over my life for like the entirety of the Olympics. And then I think the Paralympics start next week. And I'm super excited about some of the events as well. So no, I'm not watching anything. What about you?
It's so cultured of you.
Thank you.
Was your partner, is he into the Olympics as well?
Yeah. So we are a divided household because we had to make a like compromise for our life. Like I had to compromise on supporting Liverpool Premier League men in the English Premier League, like the soccer team, Liverpool. I have to support them. He has to support the US women's national team for our soccer team. I think that the men's World Cup is going to be a house that's divided, although I'll probably end up being an English men's national team fan. But it was like, it was a free for all for the Olympics because the English it's Great Britain in the Olympics. Great Britain's randomly good at like a lot of weird events that we got into. Like, I don't know if any of you watched the slalom canoeing. It was bananas.
Oh,
And
totally.
It was bananas. And there were a bunch of British people competing. And I was like, where are these people canoeing in the UK? Like, where are they doing this event? I'm convinced they just come over and live in like Colorado and then go home and compete for Great Britain.
Damn.
But it was like a token. And like in every single sport, there would be like one person from Great Britain competing that was randomly good at it. In track, in like every like random sports. So yeah, no, Will was very, very into the Olympics for like niche reasons because there would just be like one British person in like every event. And of course, I was just like, I am never more patriotic than I am watching the Olympics. Like,
I love that. That is so cute.
I go hard for Jordan Childs. I feel like as a defense attorney, I wish I could defend her with her like medal being stripped. US women's like gymnastics. I am obsessed with them.
I think I might have seen a TikTok on that question mark. Was this the thing about like, you have a certain period of time where the coach can like challenge the thing and they were saying it wasn't in that time. And they were like, no, there's video that it was. Is that this?
I think so. And then I think that they tried to appeal it and then the appeal was denied. And so I don't really know what's the status of it going forward, but I just know that I would do absolutely anything for any of the women on the US women's gymnastics team. Like they are my icons. They are my entire personality. Every time every Olympic cycle like comes around, I'm obsessed with them. Lori Hernandez was doing most of the announcing during the Olympics and I just love her. And so, yeah, that preoccupied my time for the last several weeks. And now I'm sad that the Olympics are over. So yeah. What about you, Kayla? What are you watching?
Well, I guess I'll tell you the thing that I'm not like ashamed of. And then I'll follow it up with like
Okay.
My shameful reality trash. So, Micah and I binge watched Presumed Innocent with Jake Gyllenhaal. It's on Apple TV, and you can get like 3 months free trial. So, yeah, it was super duper good. It's based on a book, keeps you guessing. It was fun to like bet Micah on like who the killer was. And like basically, it's about this prosecutor who's accused of murdering another prosecutor in his office.
Wild.
And yeah, it's fun. Highly recommend. But if you want to like get out of the courtroom, the trashy shit that I'm into, oh my God, let's see. I was really into Unexpected, which was like Teen Mom on steroids, like much better
No.
than Teen Mom. It
Okay.
focused on like, yes, oh yeah.
Okay.
It was like so good. But I finished that.
Like, I'm still so invested in the cast of Teen Mom.
Oh, for sure. Janelle?
Teen Mom was like an entire cultural movement that I feel like if you were ever into that show, you are still so invested into what those people are doing. So, yeah, I don't even know what Unexpected is, but I don't think I'm ready for that level of commitment ever again because Teen Mom was a trip that I don't think I've ever socially or
Oh,
like recovered
it
from.
was.
Yeah.
I heard back from our dear guest. He said he just finished filming. Give him 15. He's so sorry.
Oh, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. Oh my God, dude. I have never seen like a more volatile, like domestic violence relationship depicted on a reality television
Oh,
show than I
no.
did in, was it season like 3 or 4 of Unexpected? This little douchebag dude, if you saw him, you would just hate him. He just, I'll have to send you at least some clips. It's just horrible. He wasn't letting this poor little girl who's like what 15 or 16 like in labor get an epidural. He was saying like you'll be a drug addict, and he was just being such an asshole that the doctor kicked him out of the delivery room. It was horrible.
Oh,
It was
my
like
gosh.
GB 101, and he like had her follow him to the bathroom. It was just horrible and very sad to like watch depicted on. I know, like, how real is
Oh,
it?
my
But you could
gosh.
just tell that certain dynamics of it were like, you know, very troubling.
Something
Um,
that you just said, I'm putting a pin in because I was thinking about it in the last few weeks. I was talking to a colleague of mine, and it was just something that I was thinking that we should talk about on the podcast sometime. And so I'm just going to pitch it in case anybody listens to this and they're interested in it. I was thinking about, particularly with our clients and criminal defendants who have substance use disorders or have, any type of
oh yeah, this
interaction.
is totally going to come up
Um,
with our guest today.
right. And so something I was thinking about, and maybe we could ask him about it, but I want to also put a pin in it in case we don't fully get to addressing it. Like substance disorder treatment, particularly like methadone clinics and Suboxone and things kind of in that medical family. And to the point about epidurals, it kind of made me think about it. There's almost, depending, I think, on which community in the US, there's almost an attitude against chemically assisted recovery, which
Hmm.
I'm interested into your position on that, or if there's somebody that we could invite on here that would have more insight, because I think
I
that,
think Louis, here he
yeah.
comes. Speak
Oh,
of the
I'm
devil.
sorry.
Hi.
I'm
No, you're
Don't
sorry.
worry about
good.
it.
I'm
Don't
so
worry.
sorry.
You are
Give me
totally fine.
give me 2 seconds here, okay?
Take
We
all the
had
time.
to push our filming back from yesterday to today, so we just finished with somebody, which is actually a public defender, oddly enough. And can you guys give me like 2 minutes and then I got
Absolutely.
you?
Of course.
Take all your
All
time.
right. I'm so
Totally.
sorry. Thank you. Okay, I'm sorry. Oh, Kayla, Aaron's here. He wants to say hi to you.
Remember, where's she at? That's
Aaron,
the
hi. I
Hey,
just
there you
like
are.
listened to your
Hey.
episode. Your
Oh,
episode
thank-
just launched,
I
right?
know it
It
just
was so
dropped.
good.
All right, give me 2 seconds.
Okay.
Sorry.
Sounds good. Ba, 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 ba. Twisters. Have you guys seen Twisters?
No.
Like the movie or a show?
Or like the natural or the movie. Yeah.
No,
Can't recommend enough.
really.
It was It was a fucking banger.
I think I've lived through enough to never want to see a movie about
Is
it.
it like a new rendition of the old movie?
I don't know.
I think it's a new rendition of the old movie
Oh,
Twister, correct? Like, yeah,
Yeah.
about
is it a
yeah.
remake or a sequel?
I don't know.
I don't
Somewhere
know.
in the middle.
It was a fucking banger regardless, man. I was like, this is like, I was enthralled.
Apparently has a really good soundtrack. I know Shania Twain's on it, which I feel like in my book, that's like iconic. Like you get Shania Twain on an
Oh my
album,
God.
like that's instant classic in my book. But yeah, I haven't seen anything
Clark,
about the movie.
um, are Twisters like a reality for you?
Yes. Like, okay. Last night
I'm sorry, that was
I
probably
was
very ignorant.
out celebrating in downtown Nashville, and there's a certain like storm path that every storm follows. And I shit you not, I've had so many close calls, and Nashville's had so many tornadoes that last night when this severe thunderstorm was rolling in, we're out on this rooftop, and I was like, guys, I'm going inside and downstairs. I was like, I'm not fucking with it. Like, I have so much PTS from that stuff to where I'm not going to sit myself in a black theater where all I can see is people being chased by a twister. Like, that's not fun for me.
I'm just gonna put you on blast.
Okay.
That was very much somebody like born and raised in Washington coded.
Yep, pretty much. Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Oh, girl.
Ooh, listen, that shit's scary, dude.
It
Very
is.
interesting.
Yeah, like last night
Very
we
interesting.
had 60-mile-per-hour winds and hail like in certain areas.
No.
And typically when it's 60 or more, that's when you see the trees go down. So I didn't see any down today, but like 2 weeks ago when we had our last severe thunderstorm, which could always turn into a tornado because where we live, the hot air and cool air are always like hitting and mixing. And that's what creates a tornado. But like just a couple weeks ago, like I can send you guys a photo or put it on the socials, but there was literally like this massive tree that was down on the way to my everyday coffee shop. And like, that's kind of a normal.
I don't like that. I don't know enough about tornadoes, but like where some of my family lives, hurricanes are a big deal. And let me tell you, no, thank you either. Like, no,
Listen,
ma'am.
my sister lives in
Oh,
Jacksonville, Florida, and she's like, I'll take a like hurricane over a tornado any day.
Yeah. Mm-mm. Both are
Yeah,
bad. Just
both are
natural
bad.
disasters. I don't want, no. No, thank
Like
you.
I will probably end up moving closer to where you guys are eventually, just because I'm like, I've lived through
I'm
enough.
fucking done. Yeah.
I am. Yeah,
I mean,
like
we do have fires up here. That will be
Yeah.
the new natural disaster you have to contend with.
And
for
weird
sure.
like flooding issues and stuff
But
too.
I'm a fire myself. I'm an Aries, guys. I'm just always
Podcast.
hot.
Preach.
You do have like a very Pacific Northwest vibe about you, though. So I think that would be a good move.
It's all the grunge music that I play.
Oh,
In the
I love it.
Can you see me okay?
yeah,
Yeah.
What's up?
Hi.
Welcome.
Hey.
Hello. It's been a while.
Gosh, time flies. Has it been like 2 months, 3 months?
Time flies. 3 months? That sounds right.
Something like that. Our guest today is Louis Essig. Am I saying your name right, man?
You got it. You got it right the first time. It's rare.
Right on. Love your vibe. You have a very interesting life story. And I think
Thank you.
that you have a unique perspective that our listeners would really appreciate. I mean, you've been through like a lot of stuff that our clients have experienced, right? Like homelessness, addiction.
Yep.
You've done time in county jail. Have you done prison time as well?
So technically, yes, I was in a minimum security prison. That's what it's labeled by the state of Ohio. But there was like we had like cognitive behavioral therapy classes and things like that integrated into it. But I've never done like hard time. Like I'm not gonna sit here and tell you like, yeah, I've been to prison, shanked someone, whatever the case may be. But I have done over a year in total between the county and that minimum security prison. Plus, I did like a year on house arrest too, which was a blast.
Yeah, no, that's a lot. And you became a CO at some point. So that's really interesting. And was that at
Yeah,
the same facility that you were incarcerated at?
yeah, it was. The way that came about is, so for me, I was like a super low bottom alcoholic, drug addict. I don't really care what you call it. To me, it's all the same disease. But I ended up homeless. I had nothing. I had to rebuild my life from essentially nothing, and I got sober in 2016. Was working my ass off. I got a car. I got an apartment. I got some of my stuff back that I had lost, and I was in fine dining. So I was waiting tables. I worked my way up into management, which to me, I didn't think I'd ever have a life again. So to be working in a really nice restaurant in Columbus, Ohio, waiting on some prestigious people and being a manager, I was like, this is good enough. You know what I mean? I made it. And then COVID happened. When COVID happened, I went to work one night, the restaurants all got shut down, and I was kind of left sitting there like, what the hell am I going to
Mhm.
do? Because I have a criminal record. I have felonies on my record. And I went back to my judge who sentenced me to jail, and I was in a special docket drug court program. So we had a little bit of a relationship. And I was like, hey, man, you think I could, maybe work at that correctional facility? And he wrote me a reference letter. And I went in and just kind of told him the truth, and they hired me. Um, and that was probably my favorite job up to this point. It was a lot of fun working in corrections, being able to work with guys like me hands on and going through that whole thing.
Which brings us to this point. You have a podcast. Let's just plug that at the beginning.
I do, yeah.
That's what you're doing now, right? Is that your full time gig these days?
It's not my full time gig. So I actually just started working at our local news station, doing sales and marketing. So I sell advertising spots for businesses that want eyeballs in their product or want to grow their revenue. So, and that's another strange thing because I used to be on the news, and so to walk into the news station that uh,
Hell
used
yeah.
to have me on there and have the power to put people on TV is pretty bizarre.
Damn. Talk about full circle.
I was going to say,
Tell us about your podcast.
Yeah. So it's called Get a Grip Podcast. I always allow space for growth in anything I do. And we started the podcast, one day I'd always wanted to do something like this. And one day I was like, you know what, let's just do it. And that fear, I think, scares a lot of people from starting a podcast or putting themselves out there because they don't want to fail. I don't care what people think of me, and my story is my story. And so I got me and my buddy Aaron, who you met when we were out in Connecticut, filming a podcast for Ian Bick. And yeah, we bring on people, I like to say, that have underdog stories, you know, that went through difficult times in their life, whether they were involved in the justice system, whether they were sent to rehab, whether maybe they just had trauma at home, and they came out of it on the other side. And I think the big thing is, yes, we do share war stories, so to speak. We do share some of the crazy stuff that we did out there when we were drinking, using, breaking the law, whatever the case may be. But the whole point is to reduce the stigma because, I'm one of those people. And, now I have a job doing what I just explained I do, and I'm back in the community, I'm your neighbor. And so are these people that I'm bringing in here. Like, they're your neighbor too. They're the same people you see shopping in the grocery store. And the hope is just to raise some sort of awareness and give people a platform to share their story and where they've came from and where they're at today. Give hope and have a couple of laughs. Because if I can't laugh about it, then goddamn, I'd be miserable.
Amazing. Addie, I interrupted you earlier. Did you have a
no, I
question?
have so many. So, first of all, Louis, we don't know each other, but you know Kayla. And so, if any question I ask is anything that is just you don't want to share with our listeners, that is
Nothing,
entirely.
nothing is off limits.
And I
That
really,
so far.
if that changes, you are certainly free to keep whatever you want to yourself because I think that something when before you hopped on, we were talking about how you're so similar to our clients, right? And part of that is because you are situated in a position, well, you have been situated in the past where our clients were. And it is so nice to have you on the podcast. Like, I think part of why I was so excited to have you on is to talk about your experiences from the other side of the table, right? And also your life that you've had afterwards. Because something that
Sure.
I hope for more than anything as a criminal defense attorney and specifically a public defender currently is that my clients go on to have every opportunity and happiness that they want, right? That's the goal. Of course, the goal is to get them through the criminal legal system with the like least amount of collateral damage, but also try to
Right.
give them a life back because as you mentioned, having felony record, um, having, just job limitations and employment limitations because of that, those are consequences that people who aren't in this system don't really understand. And Kayla and I always want, to your point about what you do on your podcast, we really want people here to understand like the things that we're worried about that aren't just necessarily like the case itself, but like our client's life. And I take that
Sure.
super seriously. And for you, I guess kind of something that I think would be helpful for me to kind of understand your perspective is first and foremost, like at what age did you get introduced to the criminal legal system? How old were you when you had your first charge?
I want to, God, 22, maybe 22-ish. So I had a pretty good run. I started at 16. I was selling drugs from 17 on till I stopped and got sober. But 22 was the first time I was introduced to the criminal justice system. I will tell you this, the town I grew up in is really small, and the cops knew me. They knew what I was doing. They knew who I was. They wanted me, and one night they finally got me on a misdemeanor. I got pulled over. The cop lit me up, and I drove like 3 blocks instead of pulling over right away. So they gave me an eluding charge. When I got down to the jail, they found a bag of narcotics in my coat. So they charged me with a felony possession and a felony 3 conveyance because I was already getting booked into the county jail. And so that was my first introduction to the legal system. And I'll tell you what, like I grew up in a pretty well-to-do suburban neighborhood. um, that was quite the culture shock when I got down there for the first time. And I
Yeah.
was also like, with the felonies, I was like, well, my life's over. It's over
Right.
with. Like, I'm doomed.
That happens all the time. And Kayla and I talk about how we've talked about on previous episodes how just like a small run in with the cops can just become so serious on the back end. And people having, substances on them when they go to get booked into the jail, they usually get charged with like introducing, a felony substance to a public safety building or a public building. And it's a felony. And it seems like you got two out of that. And then from
Yeah.
there, it seems like you said you were in a drug court. So I'm assuming you probably had other cases and charges. And then eventually you got into like was it a treatment program or was it a diversion court?
Yeah, so I did end up catching more cases. I got two more felony drug possession charges. I mean, if you look at, well, if you look at my record and everything on it, you can pretty well tell that I had a substance abuse issue. I mean, it's pretty
Yeah.
obvious. Petty thefts, drug possessions, hit skips, DUI. It all points to the same thing. But towards the end, I had like 4 warrants for my arrest. I was homeless. They picked me up. I went to jail, and the judge was essentially like, "Listen, this is probation as your first felonies, but if you screw up probation, I'm going to send you to prison for the maximum amount of time possible." And I was like, "Well, knowing me, I'm a 100% going to screw this up. I'm going to prison." So when she said that, I knew if I took probation, I was going to prison. And that's when I asked my public defender, like, "Hey, can you get me into some kind of treatment program, whatever?" And they managed to get me into a drug court program, but it wasn't, let's see, in lieu of. So it's not like once I completed it, my charges got dropped. Once I completed it, that was it. I'm still a convicted felon. So there was
Yeah.
no like carrot dangling to finish the program other than getting my life together, if that makes sense.
That is, because I was wondering how your like access point was and just kind of the outcome. Because the reason I asked is what you just kind of answered to. Certain programs, have different outcomes in terms of if people get a reduction of charge or if people get, a diversion or anything like that. And it usually depends on what type of programming you do. So how long was your treatment court?
So it was 3.5 years, but it wasn't supposed to be 3.5 years.
Okay.
Um,
You
I
had a
got
hard time
into
with it.
yeah, so like when I started, it was very much I was kind of like a child who had just been grounded, and I was
Yeah.
like kicking and screaming, like I'm not doing this, da 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 da. Or I would like do it out of spite. So like I'd check their boxes, which was like go do a drug test 3 to 5 times a week, go to recovery meetings, go to therapy, do this, do that. But I did it all begrudgingly, and so with that came a number of sanctions. And in those drug court programs, they can send you to jail for like 3 days, 4 days, 5 days. You get out, you try again, you start over. I did overdose once in drug court, which, nearly killed me. So like I wasn't ready initially. And that's when they sent me to that minimum security prison, which they deemed a higher level of treatment. And from that point in 2016 up until now, I've been sober. So I'm very fortunate. But it what I always tell people is things didn't get better for me until I started taking suggestions. And like that goes back to like us as kids, right? Like our parents would tell us, like, hey, don't do this. This is not what you want to do. You're going to get in trouble, or this is the wrong way to go. And it would be like, no, mom, no, dad, I know what I'm doing. And, I'm sitting there as a 26-year-old man, trying to tell these people that I know what's best for myself, but I'm in handcuffs and a jumpsuit. Like my best thinking lands me in places like that. And so I started to listen to people like the judge who recommended I do X, Y, and Z, and my probation officer, and found out that they're not actually my enemy, so to speak. And I'm sure that's probably a rare take, but that's my take, is that they're there to do a job, and their job is to actually help you.
Very interesting. That kind of leads into my next question, which is I understand that at one point it was kind of like a revolving door with you going in and out of county jail during the worst of your addiction. You must have had a bunch of different public defenders during that period of your life.
Yeah, a couple. I mean, they're I don't know their names. It's their faces are kind of a blur, but I know there was a couple.
Right on. Do you have any like takeaways? Like, were those mostly negative experiences? It sounds like at least like your last public defender who got
Yeah,
you into drug court did something positive.
yeah. I
What
mean,
were
I
the other experiences like?
I don't know that. The way I always looked at it is I was in the game. And what I mean by that is like the things I was doing, whether it was selling drugs, using drugs, transporting drugs, whatever, like I'm in the game, and with the game comes consequences, and I can be arrested for that. And if I'm arrested for that, that comes with the game. So I never really found myself when I'd end up in jail being super upset about it or like blaming anybody. And when I had a public defender, it was just like, here's your options, Mr. Essig. Like this is what we're looking at, and I'd be like, okay. I wasn't very argumentative. I didn't really play the victim. I mean, I certainly there were times where I did, but I knew what was at stake. And so by the time I got to the courtroom to meet the public defender, it was just like, hey man, do the best you can. Appreciate you. Um, I think people always with public defenders are like, oh, they didn't get me off. You know, stupid public defenders, whatever. Um, but I mean, my experiences were fine, really. And like you said, the last one got me into that drug court program. I'd be in prison if that hadn't happened, or I would have gone to prison.
I was going to say, it seems like, well, I'm glad that I appreciate the take that you had with that experience, but I've always felt with my clients, especially my clients who are really going through the throes of their addiction, that, and, as somebody who is very much on the other side of the table of the experience that these people are going through, that my clients are going through, that you are going through, I've always felt like everything I could do for my client, if they aren't really wanting every option and every opportunity and every access to resources or treatment or care or whatever it may be, housing, anything. It seems as though I will always give them as many choices and opportunities as I can. Of course, I will. That's my job. But the people who I feel like who have had the most amount of success in my out of my like client book, right? Are the
Mhm.
people who come to me and they're like, I want this. I want this specific thing. I want to get into maybe it's DUI court or I want to go to this treatment facility.
Sure.
And not only are they like ready, but they're kind of sick of the like game that they find themselves in. And I think that up until that point happens, I kind of do the like dance with people of like, okay, I'm going to give you, probation. We'll get you into treatment and then we'll see how it goes. And sometimes they come back. And, that's just how addiction goes. That's how poverty goes. That's how the criminal legal system goes. But um, more often than not, too, I feel like people who get into what sounds like as serious of a drug court programming as you had are people who've been through the game for quite some time. And
Mhm.
it's really like you get either sober and clean, or like you said, you end up in prison because
Yeah,
you're
last stop.
facing huge charges, right?
Yep.
And it seems like, I mean, it's probably also normal for people who are going through that process to not really remember their attorneys as much. I think that sometimes I feel like I'm associated with trauma for a lot of my clients, and I'm
Mhm.
okay with that. But I'm really, really glad to hear that you had a positive experience with your judge at the end, because that is like, I mean, that's the person who, at the end of the day, your attorney can do whatever for you, but the last stop is the judge, right? So it's like,
Yep.
okay, that person has to be kind of on, they can really make or break your life with their decision making. I mean, your attorneys can too, but everything has to go through the judge kind of at the end of the day. And it's really cool that he was able to help you get a job. I mean, at that point, it
Yeah.
seems like he knew you for like 3 years, right?
I very I don't want to say very quickly, but I got to a point where I was like once the light bulb came on for me and I realized like there's a better way to live, I was like, man, like this would be a really cool guy to have in my back pocket. Like, why why would I not build like I know his favorite football team. I know he's a Raiders fan, Las Vegas Raiders fan. I'm a Denver Broncos fan. So when I go to see him, I give him shit about that. Like that, you know what I mean? I was like, he's another human. He's obviously running this drug court program to help people. Why would I not make him an ally?
Yeah.
Because if I make him an ally and I'm going for a job or I've sat on a panel with him. I asked him to come speak with me on a panel in front of a community. Like instead of being like, "Oh, I hate you," you sent. He's the one. He did. He's the one who sent me to that minimum security prison. But he did that for my well-being, and a lot of people can't see that. You know, um, that's their job. And I know that because I worked in corrections. And when I worked in corrections, I had to, do stuff to people that I didn't want to do, but it was my job. So, I'm able to see both sides of the fence.
Your minimum security prison that you were in, was that like a treatment prison? Were you doing like a retained jurisdiction or anything like that?
Yeah, so COVID really changed that facility. So, uh, you used to be able to like go out and like do work release.
Okay.
When I worked there, it was full lockdown. I mean, obviously you got to go outside for rec. But yeah, there was like cognitive behavioral therapy classes. They would bring in um, like church services, which is pretty common. They would bring in people who could help people find jobs, stuff like that. But for the most part, I mean, yeah, yes, there were opportunities to better yourself in that place.
Were there any like, well, I'm sure there were. Can you tell us some of the unspoken rules like within the correctional facilities that you did time in? Like both
As an
as a prisoner, I guess, and also as the CO, I'm wondering.
Yeah, I guess like the big thing is mind your own business. Um, what's going on in there? If it has nothing to do with you, it has nothing to do with you, and keep it that way. It's a lot of it's. I hate to use the term like caveman or it's like an archaic way of thinking when you're incarcerated. The stupidest things can set people off. Obviously, there's situations where you have to hang out with certain individuals. It's just a completely different environment than what we live in. As a guard or as a corrections officer, I think that what was a lot of fun for me is I know how they're thinking because I've done it already. So any line of bullshit they try to feed me is not going to go over well because I've played that game before. Um, but what I most enjoyed was being able to share my lived experience with these guys in those one-on-one situations, and a lot of people's heads would pop off, because and I don't have my mugshot available to show you. I don't, I look like a clean cut guy who went to college and did all the right things in his life. And that's just not the case. And so when I'd share, like, yeah, man, I did this, this, and this, and I was locked up and I sat right here with you, they'd be like, wow. And that connection really helped me de-escalate certain situations when things would go wrong. The respect level was high. So when it was time to go to chow, it's single file line. No one's talking out of respect for Louis because Louis has been there. And Louis, they saw it as like I really wanted to help them. And I did, that was my whole purpose for being there. It was again to this day my favorite job. And not for a reason of wanting to like power trip or have control over these guys, but to help them.
Do you ever recall a time where you were like conflicted about some policy or something that you had to do as a CEO? Like, did you ever have to bust somebody that you really empathized with and that was
Yep.
tough for you?
Yep. This is a story that I love to share because it's very, very useful, but it's heartbreaking. So as you know, tobacco contraband gets into correctional facilities, right? And
Yeah.
the way my facility worked is it was a 6-month program. It is a minimum security prison. However, if you break certain rules, they'll ship you off to another facility and you could potentially do more time, violate your probation, basically. So one day I come in and I got this spidey sense feeling that people were smoking tobacco in the unit because I had smoked tobacco in the unit when I was incarcerated. So I know what it looks like. And I called a couple of guys out that I thought were involved. I nicotine tested them. And one of the guys who I really, really liked, I really liked this guy. There was something about him that I saw something in him. He tested positive for nicotine and he was supposed to get out like in a couple days, like 3 days. So the first conversation was like, dude, what are you doing? Why would you do this? And then the second conversation was like, yeah, your out date's going to get pushed back for this. And it did. And so he was bitching and moaning and complaining about how he was going to miss his daughter's first birthday, so on and so forth. And I was telling him, like, listen, man, it's a week. You got the rest of your life. You get out, you do the right thing. You're going to have a fantastic life. You got to stay sober. You got to do things so you can be there for your daughter for her second birthday and her third birthday and her fourth birthday. And unfortunately, like this gentleman got out and he OD'd a week later and he passed away. And I saw that all the time. And it's really hard to watch, especially when you get attached to some of those guys because I get it. I was them. And as far as the policies, I guess, like, yes, it's a business. It is. I learned that. I learned when I was working there that it is in fact a business, and I understand that. The only issues I would have that really hit me on like a moral level were the lack of like recovery programming, the lack of because I mean, let's be honest, 90% of these guys have some sort of substance abuse issue, whether they want to admit it or not. And so, I just wish there had been more programming directed towards recovery. That really bothered me.
Would you say that jail like exacerbates the problem of addiction or do you think it mitigates it at all?
I was just talking about that, the podcast we just filmed. And I mean, you throw Louis, who is in active addiction, who has no idea how to get sober, no tools, and you throw him in county jail for 6 months and he just sits there. I mean, when I get out, nothing's going to change. It's without some sort of help, some sort of programming, some sort of guidance. I get out and I'm screwed and I'm off to the races. I think the justice system's turned the corner with stuff like that. I don't know about what you guys are seeing, but certainly there are special docket courts down here, and there are judges that I'm seeing that understand that people need help. A lot of these people need treatment instead of prison. Now, I'm not saying that people shouldn't go to prison, because let's be honest, there's crimes that people commit where absolutely they should go to prison. But as far as the addiction thing, I'm seeing it turn in the right direction.
Was fentanyl all over the place when you were in jail, like it is now?
Fentanyl. So I started using opiates in 2008, 2009, and it was Oxycontin. And we all know about Purdue Pharma. I'm sure you guys have seen those documentaries wherever, Netflix, Hulu, about Purdue and what they did with the drug Oxycontin. I got into Oxycontin in 2009. Purdue changed the formula to Oxycontin in 2011. The pill mills in Florida got shut down. That's when heroin hit the street. By the time I got sober in 2016, fentanyl was just starting to hit the street. And there was a point where I would go into the correctional facility. I used to before I worked there, I'd bring in like recovery meetings. I was a volunteer. And guys would say like, yeah, my drug of choice is fentanyl. And I was like, wow, like you're seeking this drug out. That was mind blowing to me, because we all know that it will kill you. So I saw it. I'm certain that I used it at one point or another, whether I knew I was or not. But I got out right before fentanyl really started to hit the street and take people out the way it is.
Thank goodness. Forgive me if this is an insensitive question.
Mm-hmm.
It's something I've always I see a lot of my clients who are dope sick.
Okay.
What is that like? I remember you talking about having to go to jail and being dope sick and people like fucking with you because you're vulnerable.
Yeah.
I mean, like, what is it like the flu, but way worse? Like,
yeah, it's hell. I think that's a fair way to put it. I mean, yes, it's the flu. So you've got all the flu symptoms: the throwing up, the diarrhea, the body aches, the restless legs. You cannot sleep, which makes it extremely difficult if you're tossed like in a cell in the county on a mat that's like this thick. That's miserable. But the way I describe it to people is like, imagine if you had the worst flu of your life, the sickest you've ever been, and someone came up to you and said, here, if you take this pill right now, it will go away within the next 5 minutes. Human nature is going to say, fuck yeah, give me that shit. I feel terrible. That's sort of what it's like. It's not fun. I've detoxed numerous times in jail. I've detoxed, whenever I didn't have the money to get what I needed. Maybe I have to go to work and I'm feeling like that. It's a terrible way to live. It's a terrible way to live.
Kayla, how many of your clients have you, because I mean, I think with your new position with your contract, I'm not sure at what point you get assigned to cases. I'm not sure if it's later in the process. But how many of your clients in your like normal caseload do you have to go and see when they're actively going through detox?
well, something that I'll have to do for part of the year as part of my contract is prelims. So
Yeah.
seeing people before their first court appearance. And that's where like you'll see people who are super duper sick, or you'll be told that they're too sick to be able to come to court.
Right.
Yeah, it looks horrible. Yeah. I'm sorry that you've experienced that.
Yeah.
it's very hard to like verbalize it properly without because there's such a mental aspect to it too. Like when you get the flu, you I don't know, like it's gonna end, and like the withdrawal will end, but your brain is just you lose your mind on top of the physical ailments. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I mean it's tricky, and I understand why people have such a hard time.
Part of my job, we go out and we're in the actual jail with people during their first appearance. So people like right after they get arrested. And so we're like in the jail with them and helping them with their
Oh
bond
yeah.
hearing, with anything like that. And so people at the jail that I work at, well, our clients are in, my clients are in, people who are detoxing, and uh, it is rough. It is really rough. And
Yeah.
I think with fentanyl and I'm gonna say with meth, the withdrawal process is a little bit different for people. I think both of
Mhm.
them, you have the vomiting and you have like physical uh sickness that I would never wish upon anybody. And I echo what Kayla said. I am so sorry for you and for anybody who has
No, I mean
experienced that.
don't be
But
sorry because the pain is what leads you to getting better.
it is it is hard. And something that is frustrating is that, you know, people who are really bad alcoholics, um, so depending on Kayla, I don't know if this is the way it is at the jails that you work at, and Lewis, I don't know if this was the way it was at the correctional facility or when you were a CO, but at the jail that my clients are in, if people are really bad alcoholics, depending on their level of withdrawal, sometimes jail medical will prescribe alcohol to them because they could literally die if they don't have
Yeah.
a certain
Yeah.
level of alcohol. People who are going through other types of substance withdrawal, I personally feel and Kayla, this is kind of the topic I was trying to talk about previously. I personally think that it's wrong that there's not medication or more of a push towards medically assisted recovery, especially for people who are incarcerated. Because I think the concern is that one, there is, medicine that is to help people who have, meth addiction, opioid addiction. We're getting that way medically, but jail medical is so far behind on that because usually they go through like a detox period when people are incarcerated and don't put them on like any meds for a period of time because they want people to just be completely clean and then they'll address their
Mhm.
meds usually a few weeks later. I am not a doctor, so I am not entirely sure, obviously, all the reasons for, medicine that could, cross react or have issues if you're putting people on medicine. But to your point, the danger then becomes if somebody is, going through detox and then a forced period of sobriety while they're incarcerated and they're not on anything to help them with that. And then they get out, they get released, OR'd, or they post bond or whatever it may be. Their tolerance then goes down because they've been incarcerated for a period of time. And then the overdose rate spikes. And that is a concern that I don't think nationally we have a solution for. I think that, and Lewis, I would like your perspective on this if you have one, because I just feel, and of course, there's stuff going on with people who are, actively in addiction. They get out, they're going to make their own choices. But there's such a fragmented system from people who are incarcerated to then getting back out and going back to their life and then not having a transition of care. Because, Kayla, as you know, most people, if they're in jail for a long period of time, their Medicaid might lapse. They get out, they might not have the same medications that they were on while they were incarcerated. They might not be given adequate meds when they're released. And even then, depending on what they're prescribed, it might not be helping with their addiction. And then the overdose rate gets up. Like the fact that we haven't figured out something for that is nuts. And I think it's an extremely harmful part of the criminal legal system that we haven't found a solution for. And I was just wondering what your perspective was on that.
I mean, there's a couple things. So, from one of my personal experiences, I did 5 months in the county jail just before I got sober. And so I sat for 5 months. I got out on house arrest, and it was a Friday, right? And so, obviously, the way drug testing works, If I get high at 7 a.m. Friday morning and drink a shitload of water over the weekend, hopefully I'll be clean Monday. So I got out on a Wednesday after doing 5 months. Friday rolled around. I was like, I'm going to use. I did. I overdosed and collapsed in the front lawn. The house I was living in was empty at the time. So I don't get out to the front lawn. I'm dead. And so to your point, I had no tolerance. I got high one time. I overdosed. I almost died. And that was after doing 5 months. I've also seen guys working on the other side of the fence where, I mean, with medically assisted treatment, I don't know if that's where you were referring to the like MAT programs. I'm personally not a big fan of that. Suboxone, methadone. I think that yes, it's great for harm reduction, but you're still shackled to a ball and chain, and it's Suboxone or methadone. Like if I'm taking Suboxone and I miss a dose, I'm going to get just as sick as if I'm shooting heroin. And so for me, I always just went in, did the detox, and got sober, and I'm fortunate for that. But on the flip side of that coin, with the medically assisted treatment, my mom died of an overdose, right? And I kind of wish she had gotten on the MAT program because she'd still be alive.
Yeah.
So it's a toss up there. I've seen guys that will do 5 years in prison, and then they would come to my facility where I worked at before they went back into the community, and we'd say, listen, you need to go to a sober living. Like, you need more structure following your release for your own safety. And they'd be like, man, I just did 6 years. You think I want to go do another, I want to be locked up for another 30 days? And it's like, but brother, you don't understand. You don't do this. You go out, go right back to what you were doing. You're going to go do another 6 years.
Yeah.
You can't convince every single guy to move to a sober living, move to a halfway house. They have to want it for themselves. I've seen it time and time again, and ultimately, it's why I walked away from the field. It was just, it's frustrating.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of having to want it for yourself, what has motivated you personally to stay clean?
It's a good question. It's a very simple question, but I haven't been asked it in a very long time.
Mm.
Um, I think at my bottom, I wanted to kill myself, but I was too much of a coward to do so. Like, I didn't want to live anymore. But like, if I overdosed or if I got like hit by a bus, like, that would have been cool. I would have been fine with that. And I wanted to get clean, but I didn't know how. So I was stuck in this like
Yeah.
terrible limbo of like being like passively suicidal and wanting a better life, but not knowing how to do it. And I always say, the way I was raised, my dad was amazing. I'm really grateful for the way he raised me, although my mom was alcoholic and passed away from this disease. But once I started to take suggestions, and I started to realize that, like, I'm not this piece of shit that people make me out to be, or that I feel like I am on some days. Like, I'm actually kind of smart. I'm not a complete dumbass. I have a disease, and I have a mental obsession, and I have an allergy to alcohol and drugs. And when I put one drink or one drug in me, I cannot stop. And so, like, once I racked up 6 months sober, a year sober, and I started to get things back. I started to, oh, I have a car now. Oh my God, this is incredible. Oh,
Yeah.
I have an apartment now. Like, that was really cool. And I got to a point where I took the ceiling away, I took the limits away, and I said, you know what? None of what I did is going to dictate the future. And I want to go out there and I want to help people like me. I I can't tell you I had like a burning bush moment where it was like God came down from the sky and lit a bush on fire and was like, "Oh, Lewis, this is your path." It happened over time, and I wanted to make my dad proud. He passed
Mm.
away from cancer almost a year ago, and I got to do that. That was really great to be there for him. Um, like I said, I sat with the judge who sent me to jail, sat with him on a panel. Um, Once the light bulb came on, like I was all in, and it's kind of how my personality is. I'm all in. I always say my fifth grade teacher told my dad that she wanted to know what I was doing as an adult because I could do anything with my life. And, I was a damn good drug addict. I could do anything. I was a damn good drug addict. I was a pretty good server when I waited tables. I was a decent corrections officer. I'm a decent sales. It's just whenever I do something, I'm all in. And once that fog was lifted, man, and I could see straight and I realized what I was capable of, something just shifted in my brain. And I just said, fuck it. I'm going for it. All of it.
Amazing. Your story is incredibly inspirational.
Completely agree. Like, I just feel like you're saying all of these beautiful, amazing things, and it's just like filling my soul with happiness because the you being able to do the things because you committed to it and you realizing that you had all of this potential and opportunity that I'm sure, other people had told you along the way, but you really
I
internalizing
I
that.
hate the word privilege, or I hate the word potential. It's
Yeah.
my fucking least favorite word in
But
the
you know what I
entire
mean?
world.
But you know what I mean by that? Like, you had every
Yeah, yeah,
opportunity, and for you to really internalize that and be like, "Oh, I don't want potential, I want to, like, be," is
yeah.
so amazing, and I'm so thrilled that you came on because it's just, like, it's so healing when the success story that we want for people, when it actually works, is just so incredible, and you should be very proud of yourself. And I really mean that. I had a question in terms of, and maybe you don't have an answer, but if you do, I would really like you to know. And if you want to think about it, please tell me. But ask somebody who, you know, I don't have the same experiences to people that I represent. I think that there's parts of my life where I really connect to parts of my client's life. And I think that's why I find so much meaning in my job. But I never want to feel like I'm out of touch or lecturing my clients. And I always want my intention of helping people to be meaningful for them. And, there are, I think, criminal defense attorneys with time and experience and just who understand more. But I just would like your perspective as somebody who's gone through the criminal legal system as a defendant and then worked as a CO and is now somebody who is just enjoying life on the other side, who went through all of that. If there was something that you thought your attorney should know in order to help you, I would really like to know what that is. And and feel free to think about it, but I always come back to that. I'm like, I want the light bulb to go on for my clients, and they have to turn the light on themselves. But if there's any way that I can like wire the electrical system for them, I want to help them do that.
I guess, I have seen, obviously working corrections, I've seen so many different types of people, and you guys do too. So many different defendants, so many different crimes, so many different reasons why they committed the crime, if they committed the crime. Um, for me, all I could do, and I did it when I asked my public defender for help. I knew what my problem was. Like I knew exactly why I was doing the things I was doing and breaking the law, and I was honest with um my public defender and my attorney. But you're gonna run across those career criminals that it's the path they've chosen. And I've personally heard people in jail say, had to lay it down for 6 months, nah, needed to get a break in. I've been going too hard. Let me lay down, take a nap. Um, so it's such a hard question to answer because I've seen so many different types of people with so many different types of crimes for so many different types of reasons. Um,
Yeah.
I don't. My whole thing was just to be honest. Um, but it's a tough question to answer. I don't know if that helps at all.
No, it does. I feel like for me, the hardest thing sometimes, and Kayla, I don't know if you can relate to this, but I always tell my clients when I feel like I don't necessarily know what they're wanting, that I want to give them some time and I want them to take that time to be honest with themselves. But some people aren't ready for that. And um, it's funny that you say that because that's something that I've said to people before. I'm like, I want you to give you some time for you to be honest with yourself. And then from whatever we're doing to come from a place of like that truth and then move forward. But for some people, they're not ready for that. And then the best thing we can do is just try to like minimize collateral damage for their life.
Right.
But I think success for anybody really comes from a place of really knowing yourself and knowing what your issues are. And some people, whether it's from their substance use disorders or just mental health problems or just like trauma or whatever it may be, there's a huge hurdle there. And some people get over it and some people don't. And the repeat clients, that's, I think, the part where there's a disconnect. And unfortunately, I don't think the criminal legal system does anything to help those people with the like deep work that I think needs to happen, especially if they're just
Yeah.
incarcerated constantly.
Yeah.
So,
Well, on that note, you've been so generous with your time. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Of course, of course. I appreciate you having me, and it's cool that we got to connect randomly. I went to get some coffee, came in, and there you were, out in Connecticut, and I'm glad we got to connect and do this. It's I don't know, it's cool to sit here with people who work directly in the criminal justice system and actually give a shit. And like I said, I see things trending in that direction, and that's so important. Um, to try and help people and just talk about it. It's not that scary, man. People don't have to pretend like we can't talk about these things.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I really appreciate your authenticity and honesty regarding all of this stuff. It's so important. And
Of
you're right.
course.
I think it's an asset for sure.
I want to say thank you as well. And I just want to say, like, thank you so much for coming and talking about your experience. Like, to the point of just, you are the people in our community. You are like, you are the embodiment of people in our community. And I think that people just need to understand that the criminal legal system is not this like abstract thing, it's what's happening in your community.
Totally.
It's so funny, right? My last job. So I go to apply. My record is sealed now, by the way. It's
Good.
expunged.
Okay.
It doesn't
Oh, cool.
exist except one DUI, which
Woo!
it's a decade old. DUIs happen,
Damn
right?
interstate compact.
DUIs
Um,
Yep,
happen.
that'll happen.
they happen. Okay,
Then
no
they'll come off.
judgment, no judgment. But I apply for this job, my previous job, and I was given a bunch of pushback because of my record. And they were like, "Oh, like, can you explain this to me?" So what I did was I sent them some videos of me speaking in the community in different settings that could tell the story better than I could going in, sitting down for 2 hours, being like, "Well, this happened, this happened, this happened." Like, no, I get back. And while I was working at that same job, I had my record sealed and expunged. And I'm sitting there in the office knowing now that I'm not a criminal. And it's like, you guys gave me all this pushback. You actually didn't want to hire me. The only reason I got hired was because I had a buddy who worked there that said, "This guy's a killer salesman. You need to hire him." And, three-fourths the way through my career at this job, my record is sealed and I'm sitting there and I'm still the same person. It's the same guy you
Still
hired
me.
from day one. You just can't see my record now. And if I had gone in for an interview without that, you would have been like, "Oh, I love Louis. He's amazing. Let's hire him right off the bat." Like, that's
I'm
crazy.
still
Hmm.
I'm
That
still
is
the same
crazy.
person. Yeah.
Like, it's the same
That's,
Louis.
yeah,
I love
perfect story to end on.
Yeah,
I
and
love that.
I love the like amount of just like no shame about it too, because it's like there shouldn't be. And I really think that the world would be a better place if people were just like, this is me, this is my shit, I'm owning it. I'm moving forward. I'm trying to be a better person. Like, don't, and to the point we were talking about with like, we're all better than the greatest thing. Like, we're all better than the worst thing we've ever done. 100%. And oh man, that pisses me off about your job. I'm so sorry. But I
No,
mean,
it's all good because, I went through that experience and I got my record sealed and I moved up. I got a better job and, some of those people can go online and probably find me, but during the interview process, I was just a normal guy for once.
Mm.
Like, and that felt incredible. Like, hey, here's why I'm a good fit for your company. You don't have to look at my record. You can just look at Louis, see what I've done, see I'm a good salesman, and hire me based off of that instead of being like, oh, drug possession. Oh my God. Like, come on, man.
Yeah. Well, two things before you hop off. One,
Sure.
super stoked that I got to be a part of this. I don't do anything with the law. I just like produce this podcast. So
Sure.
reading the text earlier, it did not sink in like what kind of conversations we were going to get into. So all that I will say is that from human to human, I needed this and super appreciate you sharing as much as you did. Two, before you get going, talk to us about your podcast, Get a Grip. Where
Sure.
can we find it?
Yeah. It's just called Get a Grip Podcast. YouTube, we're on YouTube. I did finally roll out an Instagram for the podcast. We have our clips on TikTok. Spotify is probably a week or two out. We're like 13, 12 episodes in, so I'll backload everything onto Spotify. But we had Ian Bick on. He came on our podcast, which was cool. We've had some good guests, and it's just a very wide variety of individuals that have incredible stories. Like I said, we literally just finished with a public defender right before I hopped on this podcast, so that was cool. And we're trying to get the word outside of Columbus, Ohio. Spread awareness, and if you can get a couple laughs out of it, because God knows, like I said in the very beginning, if I couldn't laugh at some of the shit I did, I'd be a very miserable person.
well, thank you for making me laugh. I feel like I needed that too, because I feel like parts of what we talk about on here and just what we do are just so bleak, and there
Yeah.
has to be kind of some light in it. So, thank you for making me laugh. And I think I speak for the whole Drinks with Defenders crew that you are welcome back anytime. And thank you for joining us.
Thank you guys. Thank you.
Yeah.
You're the best. If you need
Good to
anything,
see you again.
of course, good to see you. If you need anything, please let me know. Happy to help any way I can.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks so
Thank
much.
you.
Thanks,
All
guys.
right.
All right.
Have a good night.
Yeah.
You too.
Bye.
Good night.
See you.
Oh my gosh, Kayla, I am so happy we had him on. I feel like that was
Oh,
just like it
good.
was so lovely. So
Oh,
I,
good. I'm so glad
yeah.
that you enjoyed the conversation.
Did you? I feel like it was just
Yeah,
so
for sure. For
lovely.
sure. Absolutely. What do you think, Clark?
Oh man. Gosh, what was he talking about? I almost yeah, I think it was the dad part. I almost lost it,
Yeah.
you know? Like and hearing more about his story. I grew up around people who were in and out of jail. Like my best friend growing up, his parents were in and out for random drug related charges. So it for me, I take the personal side personally because it's like
Yeah.
I've grown up with people right across the street from me who could not get it together for a long time. And to hear his story and to hear that like he got to be there and turn things around to a point to where he could do the thing he was meant to do with his dad was like really inspiring. The whole thing was inspiring for sure. And while I have, really no connection with that person, it was it hit me at some point that like this is happening. This is a human that I've never met before. And this is making an impact on me who has no, I don't know, I, I can't relate on so many things, but like there's a human element to where it's like he's speaking like the criminal. Sorry, I'm doing a terrible job at explaining this. Like the criminal
You're good.
side is
You
like,
can like feel his authenticity.
yeah, like the criminal side is the obvious side. But like
Yeah.
so many people are living with addiction or hidden things or feeling like a piece of shit or a fuck up. But if like he can get through it, it's not to say that everyone can, but it's like,
The hope,
damn.
the hope of
Yeah,
it.
like
It's
that
really
exists.
beautiful.
Yeah.
That's what I was saying. Like, it's just so like, it just makes your soul feel good. Like seeing the like success, just perseverance and oh, it's just amazing. That was super moving. Yeah. I'm really glad we had him on. So
Same.
Oh, hey, what does Oprah have?
what? What?
It was something stupid. Go ahead.
What?
No, I'm just saying it was like, it's stupid. It's something about Oprah. It's dumb. Go ahead.
Oh my God. No,
I was like, it's
gonna
like
say,
Soul Sunday, which is, oh, fuck me. Never mind.
oh my God. That needs
You
to be
go,
a little
you go,
clip.
you go. Okay, everybody, thank you so much for joining us, and cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers.